the Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee to order. Mr. Price and myself are here, so we have a quorum. We are going to begin with the folks that have listed multiple items, and those are we'll start with Mike Greenspan, to be followed by Antonio Ramirez.
How many minutes do I get?
You get 2 minutes on the items and 1 minute under general public comment, which is limited to the purview of this committee.
All right. Mike Greenspan. Gee, I haven't seen you since the last committee meeting. Yes, this thing started on time. Great job. It's kind of like UCLA going for the ball after the other teams recovered the fumble. Now,
I think you're off topic, by the way.
Let's elect our Civil Service Commission, number one. I mean, nothing bad about appointing Ms. Vicki Curry to the Board of Civil Service Commissioners, but I'm always one of those who believes more in elective government and not appointive government. So let the person run. It gives the candidates more money for contributions from service employees and AFSCME, you know, the ones who have the vested interest and run the show. Now, we come to number 2 and number 3. Let's go back to John Walsh, rest in peace. He always talked about exemptions of Deputy Superintendent of Building and, of course, Deputy General Manager, Airports one, from the Civil Service. And, of course, it was pursuant to Charter Section 1001B. In other words, we're saying the person's not qualified. Otherwise, they'd just go through the qualifications process, but it's probably someone who knows someone. It might be kind of a local Ed Buck type who gives to campaigns and, gee, has an irresponsible son or daughter that can't hold down a job, so we warehouse them in our city, of course, at our expense. Number 4, it's called an Assistant Environmental Compliance Inspector. More government. Can't we just somehow do with the ones we have? Gee, I wonder why we've always had financial problems in the city and talked about bankruptcies. Now, let's go to number 9. I call this a way station for killing. We're basically talking about the memorial service to be held for the pit bulls that are going to get euthanized. Let's bring in a nice scab rabbi for the memorial service. After all, I've been to the animal shelters. The ones that do not get picked up are the pit bulls. All the others seem to, cats and other dogs, no problem, but pit bulls have a one-way ticket. And let's talk about, again, on the 10 and 11, we're talking about to spay, neuter. How about spaying, neutering strays that we have? And why don't we check for rabies? It would really help to know if people... if your kids have been petting a dog or something that they find dead and then they discover it has rabies, well, now you only get 5 days worth of shots. But when I was a kid, 3 paper boys out of 4 of us petted a dog and then they found it dead. And my mom told me about this dog at our paper drop, dead, had rabies, and the other 3 carriers had to get 14 days of rabies shots in their arms and they couldn't even throw a newspaper. So we're going to spay neuter, and they're strays. Let's check for the rabies for our public health. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, item number 1. Teach your prospective civil service employees that civil service is a sacred duty to the residents. You need integrity, ethics, high standards, self-respect, honesty, competence, and professional skills, which Democrats just don't have. Item number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, what LA needs is to welcome all our tourists, our guests, our visitors, and residents with love, warmth, joy, and good tidings. Guide them, instruct them, offer them free coffee and goodies. Free. They deserve that after a long flight. And if you can throw all your parties and events, you surely can muster up and bring out some money and buy some coffee and goodies for these wonderful people that help our economy. Number 4, please elaborate in English exactly what the hell Assistant Environmental Compliance Inspector does and where in the city do they focus this so-called job, because LA is stinky, unsafe, and uninhabitable. God bless America. And lastly, most importantly, provide safety. Welcome all. We need to welcome and protect first and foremost all our residents. And number 7, we need ICE to review the city personnel files and deport all city and county criminal felons and undesirables. Moreover, who is in charge of hiring has done a horrific, deplorable job. They hire sloppy, lazy-ass, unethical, unskilled, unprofessional, substandard assholes. The Democrats, Eric Garcetti, ghetto, shitty standard hiring practices, i.e. homeboy and homegirl industries. What does it say about them and the Democrats? And number 8, personnel needs to first and foremost hire our homeless, employed, beloved military veterans, whether they are active or inactive, uniformed or ununiformed. And we need better quality of people such as our military veterans. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, I had an incident last night involving one nigger who works in general services at La Placita. And what he did was when he went from...
Excuse me, you're not on topic.
I'm
Please
on
stand.
public comments now.
Public comment needs to be in the purview of this committee.
Oh, I thought, am I on time? Am I on
Yeah,
topic right
you're,
now? Wait
you're not on topic.
wait
It's
a
not
minute.
within the purview of this committee.
This is public comments. This is general services. This is personnel.
No.
I'm sorry, personnel is not under, this is, general services does not
So-
fall under city personnel.
No,
Does
not in the
general
purview of
services
this
does not
committee.
fall under this?
Not on the purview of this committee.
Oh, well, anyway, we have lousy city employees, and we need to change the quality, the standards, and how they provide services to the residents. All residents deserve equal treatment, equal protection. And God bless the LAPD. Some of them play the race card game, but God bless them, they too have a hard time trying to be objective. We all want, I believe, in taking care of all. Everybody deserves quality,
Thank
and
you. You're
regardless
10%.
of their race.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask that we place item 4, item 9, item 10, and item 11 on consent, and that we also take item 1 on consent as a note and file of the mayor's communications, since the candidate has withdrawn from consideration under that item.
You said 1, 4, 9.
1, 4, 9, 10, and 11. And first, actually, I think, actually, let's make it 1, 9, 10, and 11.
Mr. Chair, on item 4, we received a report subsequent to the release of the agenda, amended ordinance.
Yeah, I'm going to hear item 4 anyway, so I withdrew that from. So without objection, those items will be passed. And let's begin with item number 2.
Item number 2, communication from the mayor relative to the re-exemption of one deputy superintendent of building, class code 9201, from the civil service for the Department of Building and Safety pursuant to Charter Section 1001B.
Good afternoon, council
Afternoon.
members. We would like to request a re-exemption for the Department of Building and Safety for Deputy Superintendent of Building. This is a position that is currently funded and in their budget, and it would be number 144 of the 150 exemptions.
Would you state your name, please, for the record?
Sorry. Alma Guerrero, Mayor's Office.
Thank you. And I just have one very brief question. Will Building and Safety restrict this to only candidates that have 2 years of experience with the Department of Building and Safety? And if so, why that restriction?
Good afternoon, Frank Bush, General Manager of Building and Safety. The requirements are because of the experience that is needed to manage the Bureau there. And having the experience within Building and Safety is very important to us to start off at the beginning of the job in there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll ask that we approve this item without objection.
Can we send this forthwith? Is there some?
Yes, I suspect we can send that forthwith from committee. So if so, we will.
Okay.
Item number 3.
Item 3, communication from the mayor relative to the re-exemption of one deputy general manager airports 1, class code 162 from the civil service for the Los Angeles World Airports pursuant to Charter Section 1001B.
Alma Guerrero, Mayor's Office. We're requesting a re-exemption request for the LAX for a Deputy General Manager of Airports 1. This is a re-exemption, and it is currently funded and in their budget, and this would also be number 143 of the 150 exemptions.
Okay, and I'd like to ask, so why is this position a Deputy General Manager 1 instead of the various chief classifications that are also available?
Good afternoon, Matthew Fitzgerald, Los Angeles World Airports. There's variations, there's 3 levels on that classification, and they're used in different divisions within the airport relative to the different work. So there's different levels of work and different pay grades associated with that.
And so the level of work in this position...
And this position has been a 1, and it's funded as a 1, allocated as a 1, and so we're looking to refill it at that level.
And how many deputy GMs does LAWA have currently?
Is it 12?
Michael Leonard from Government Affairs, about 12.
I don't know if that's an unusual structure, but that seems like an unusually large number of deputy GMs. Any reason why LAWA structures that way?
When I first came to Los Angeles World Airports 20 years ago, we had bureaus. It reflects the size and complexity of the airport department and the span of control that's involved in a department that's got 3,000 employees. And that's why we have the specialization that we have, represented by the number of deputy executive directors that we have. Also, it's tied in with the ongoing $14 billion worth of construction work and projects that are being done at the airport. That's also reflected in the number of deputy executive directors and the people at that level.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? If not, we will recommend that this item move forward without objection, and we approve the mayor's recommendation on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4.
Item 4, CEO and city attorney reports and ordinances relative to the establishment of the salary for the new class of Assistant Environmental Compliance Inspector, class code 4288.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Michelle Upshaw, CAO Employee Relations Division.
Good afternoon. Adrian Murphy, LA Sanitation and Environment.
So the item before you is for the salary setting of the Assistant Environmental Compliance Officer, and we're both here to answer any questions.
What's the need for this position?
So this position is going to be a feeder class into the class of the Environmental Compliance Inspector. So this is like a bridge into that class. And that's to help with the retention issues of the actual environmental compliance inspectors.
Great. Any other questions?
Are these trainee positions then?
Yes, they are.
And how are they going to be working with the care teams? How do we see them?
Well, right now, the environmental compliance inspectors are working alongside maintenance laborers and refuse collection truck operators for the care teams. And so what we're hoping is that the assistant ECI position would feed into that. So they will be assisting the ECIs, hopefully training to become full-time ECIs.
And what's the process going to be for hiring these individuals? What's the
We're planning to hire them in lieu of the ECI position. Right now, we're planning to hire up to about 10 for this fiscal year.
And what's the process going to be? Are we going to start regular recruiting, or are they coming from a pool of?
Yes, so we're hoping that there will be an exam for the ECI, for the assistant ECI, and then they would be placed into those positions that way after exam and selection, interview selection.
Okay. And they're going to be how many?
We're looking at about 10 for this fiscal year, sitting in lieu of regular ECI positions.
Okay. No questions.
Thank you. And we have one speaker from the public, Michael Davies from EAA.
And again, for the record, Michael Davies, Engineers and Architects Association. We represent the environmental compliance inspectors in that class. Chairman Koretz, Councilmember Price. We absolutely have no objection to a bridge class, something we've encouraged for the decades. This provides a career ladder for maintenance laborers that they wouldn't otherwise have in an area in terms of activities of the city where a great deal of labor power is required these days. Our concern is primarily the process in terms of notification. Although I parachuted back into the union recently, I can't find any record of consultation on this. Since this is a bridge class that would, assuming they can cross the bridge in within 5 years, join us in terms of our unit and our employees, our members, as full environmental compliance inspectors. This adds an additional duty for them in terms of training up their colleagues.
And I have to apologize, but you'll have to wrap it up.
Okay. And as a transition, as it is, there's a letter of intent which was attached to our recently adopted MOUs, which requires that a class specs be reviewed for environmental compliance inspector. And I just wanted to make it clear, we've had some difficulty with a number of departments getting follow through on this. The deadline was November 22nd, it's come and gone. Some departments perform better than others, and this is an occasion perhaps for us to tighten this up with sanitation, and that's primarily why I'm here, to use this as an opportunity to
perhaps we can encourage them to meet with the CAO and sanitation to meet with you and iron these issues out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Otherwise, I would recommend that we approve the CAO's report recommendations in this report without objection.
Mr. Chair, we've got two CAO reports on this one. Would that be the December 2nd, which is the most recent report with the revised ordinance, or the earlier one?
I believe it would be the more recent one.
Okay.
Thank you. Item number 5.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5, CAO report relative to proposed amended memorandum of understanding for temporary use of operating engineers bargaining unit, MOU 62.
Good afternoon, Dana Brown, Chief Employee Relations Officer, Office of CAO. The MOU for the hiring hall building operating engineers has been renegotiated. This agreement doesn't have an expiration date, and it has not been amended since 2014. This MOU represents the 11 building operating engineers employed by the Department of General Services on a temporary basis from the hiring hall. The key components of the agreement are updated wage rates to 100% of the hourly base wage for the full-time MOU 9 BOEs, and then it's 100% for the licensed BOEs and 90% for those that are unlicensed. 2 additional holidays for members of the unit. They used to have 8, now they will have 10, and they will be eligible for holiday premium pay on those days if they work. 3 days of bereavement leave for employees who have been employed for 12 consecutive months, and parking privileges for those on swings and night shifts. The total additional costs are $200,000 annually. As I said, there are only 11 of them with us, and they're all with the Department of General Services, and I am available for additional questions.
Yeah, what type of licensing separates the unlicensed and the licensed building operating engineers?
Okay, so in MOU 9, for our full-time regular ones that are in MOU 9, they are licensed, and the licensing is for, it's the ability to operate the boiler system. For the hiring hall, you don't have to be licensed, and in fact, we only have 2 unlicensed ones, and my understanding is that General Services prefers licensed ones, and if we ever were going to hire more, we would probably be looking for licensed ones. But we do have 2 unlicensed ones, and they're just not able to do the boiler operations, but they're able to do everything else.
And why are we temporarily using operating engineers bargaining unit for folks that are hired out of the union hiring hall normally?
Well, generally speaking, we use them for, like temporary projects that have a particular scope. Without question, though, over the last years, or some years back when we started having financial difficulties and we were not hiring as many full-time employees, those employees started to stay with us longer, which is kind of how we got to a place where they're saying, well, give us a few more benefits for those of us who are here for 12 months. It seems right that we would have bereavement leave. If you recall, we recently also instituted sick leave for these employees some months back. So, it's for the temporary projects that we have going on citywide with general services. But in some cases, they stay on longer than what you would generally consider to be temporary.
Makes sense. Thank you. Mr. Price, any questions? So I'll ask that we approve the CAO recommendations without objection.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 6.
Item 6, CAO report relative to the 2019-22 successor MOU for the Inspectors Unit, MOU 5.
I have to come in here in solidarity with my lady here, so I switched seats for you. Okay, so again, good afternoon. I'm Dana Brown, Chief Employee Relations Officer, Office of the CAO, and with me is Leticia Ortiz, who is one of the city's lead labor negotiators, also from the Office of the CAO. Before you today for approval and submission to full council is the 2019 to 2022 successor MOU for the Municipal Construction Inspectors Association, which is MOU 5. MOU 5 represents approximately 880 inspectors employed at the Department of Building and Safety, Housing, ConAd, LAWA, and the Port.
I'm sorry, a total of 800, you said?
About 880 of them. The key provisions of this agreement are as follows. There's a 3-year term. The general base wage movement is 2% in January of 20, 2.75 in July of 2020, 2% in July 2021, and 2% in June of 2022. There are a special salary adjustment for elevator inspectors and an increase in deputy pay. And of course, there are the general provisions that were afforded to the other bargaining units during this round of negotiations, which would include the salary structure change from 15 to 12, the elimination of the 10% health care contributions, the expansion of the family illness benefits to allow the 75% usage, the increase in vacation accumulation from 2 years to 3, and the legal updates including payroll deductions and dues, which was the former agency shop, sick time, and the unit membership list. Now, I do want to point out that there is an error in the council transmittal. This unit did not make any changes to their overtime accrual formula. As you are aware, other units during this round made changes that allowed authorized absences with pay to count against the threshold for overtime accrual. MOU 5 already had that provision, so it's not something that needed to be highlighted as a change in the transmittal, and I apologize for that. This MOU has taken a little extra time in order to work out some of the issues that face the membership. The departments did work together with the CAO to find common ground and address these issues with solutions that everyone could live with. Fortunately, the first base wage movement isn't scheduled until January 2020, so we're not behind. And these provisions will increase costs associated with the MOU by approximately $9.8 million over the term of the contract. As I indicated, it is a fairly small unit. It is recommended that this agreement be forwarded to full council for adoption, and Ms. Ortiz and I are available for any questions you may have.
Well, you just answered most of my questions. That was good. The only question I have is, what's the explanation for the salary adjustment for elevator inspectors? Why the increase?
So the increase to the elevator inspectors was to align them with the rates at the state level, and it was really to address recruitment and retention issues that the departments are facing.
So the department's having difficulty with this particular classification?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just one, $10 million is $10 million.
It is.
Was this increase accounted for in the budget?
So for the current fiscal year, well, they don't have anything in the current fiscal year, do they? Okay. So, no. So January is the first is the first increase? I'm like thinking about this through my head. Okay, so January is the first increase, which is in this fiscal year.
Right.
Yes, it is accounted for in the budget.
Very good. All right, I will recommend that we approve the CAO recommendations without objection. And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Item number 7.
Item 7, Personnel Department report relative to the implementation, benchmarks, and hiring goals of the Targeted Local Hiring and Strategic Workforce Development Task Force.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Cynthia Fletes with the Personnel Department. As instructed by council during the budget deliberations in fiscal year 17-18, the Personnel Department has continued to report back on the number of hires through the TLH program as compared to the traditional civil service process. During the current reporting period, from July 1st through 2019 through September 30th, 2019, there were a total of 85 hires made from the 7 TLH classifications from the TLH program, as compared to only 51 hires through the traditional civil service process. This is an increase from the previous reporting period. There are currently 63 active referral requests with approximately 93 pending offers. Therefore, we do expect the percentage of TLH hires to continue to increase in the next reporting period. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a bunch of questions for you. First of all, has the Department of Building and Safety ever hired admin clerks through the TLH program? And if not, have they ever looked at that?
Yes. Since inception in 2017, Building and Safety has hired a total of 38 office trainees in lieu of admin clerks.
Oh, very good. And why were fewer than half of the gardener caretakers hired from the TLH program?
So we do have a current gardener caretaker eligible list, which will expire in January 2020. So it's possible that departments are filling half their vacancies through the TLH program and then using the eligible list for the other half. But that list looks like it will expire soon.
So perhaps they won't reinstate that list and will just hire from TLH in the future. Or at least it would certainly encourage that.
Absolutely.
Regarding TLH hiring in general, I know background checks often identify potential issues to be considered. At the same time, we're trying to hire from populations who have disadvantages and a history of homelessness or other challenging circumstances. Many of these candidates come through a work preparation pipeline, like the city's LA Rise program, which focuses on homelessness. So if these programs are already identifying background problems, why do we also do background checks that may limit people for the same reasons?
So the TLH candidates, when they apply through the WorkSource centers, they actually don't go through the city's background process. They only go through the city's background process at the time that they're offered or made a conditional job offer. We are working with community-based organizations to ensure that they provide assistance to the candidates in preparing a background package. In the event that they do have disqualifying convictions, they can then submit an appeal and have their paperwork ready.
How's that work as a practical matter? Are we still hiring a decent number of folks in that circumstance?
Yes, we've had a number of successful hires that have gone through the background process and sometimes appealed successfully and still been able to attain a permanent city job.
And also in general, not just for TLH, but in general, I know medical and background checks are often required after a conditional job offer is made, and then it sometimes takes longer than ideal in that process, and sometimes if there's a surge in hiring, that can get backlogged. So is there some way to work around it so we don't wind up having a bottleneck that winds up having people that we've made offers to go elsewhere rather than wait an extended period of time?
So in regards to the Vince Cordell Personnel Department, in regards to the medical and the background, we continue to work with those divisions closely to, assist departments when they encounter bottlenecks or issues. I'm aware of a few issues where there's been times where there wasn't appointments. If they reach out to my staff, we work with those divisions to ensure that those individuals are scheduled in a timely manner. But it is an ongoing effort to try to work with the divisions to ensure that, especially on the medical end, where we have enough appointments on time to get these individuals scheduled and evaluated.
Do we have a way to increase staffing even on a temporary basis when we see those kinds of bottlenecks to try and ease them through?
I could take that back to the division and ask them and report back at the next meeting to see if there's ways to see on a temporary basis. Perhaps they could, hire as needed or TLH staff to assist in those areas.
And I know one aspect of the background check is review of DMV records, as I understand it, and this seems pretty simple and seems like it could be done before a job offer is made rather than after. Is there a way to look at changing and streamlining that process?
So that actually was brought to our attention recently because some of the new classes added to TLH, and we're working with the medical services division and the departments that have that specific issue. Right now, again, just trying to come up with a solution to expedite it. Now that we're hiring quite a few individuals who do have to have a specific license at the time of hire. So we can report back on that as well.
That'd be great. Mr. Price, any additional questions?
Just a couple. First of all, thanks for your report. This is something that the chair and I certainly have a great deal of interest in as we've been pushing this forward over the last several years now. As I look at the report, the percentages appear a little misleading because if a department hires one person through target local hire and zero, then they have 100%. Looking at the administrative clerk classification, for example, while the percentage is lower, they have a majority of the target local hire for the reporting period. How many positions are actually open for the categories that have zero hires, including the targeted local hire? And just as a follow-up, I think it would be helpful to know how many positions are open in each category. Is that information possible, say, at the next report?
One challenge we may encounter is that we don't have departments' vacancy information for these 7 classifications at any given point in time. So we only have the information that they report to us at the time that they submit a referral request. In other words, they let us know we have X number of vacancies that we'd like to fill through the TLH program. And then to obtain these civil service hires, we use our payroll system and take a look at how many individuals were hired in these 7 classifications during the reporting period, which, as you mentioned, may make the percentages of total hires a little misleading. But we can go back and see if we could restructure the report to provide a more clear picture.
Yeah, maybe in the next report, subsequent reports, if you can sort of break it out a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll note and file the Personnel Department report without objection. Item number 8.
Item 8, continue from November 6, 2019, Personnel Department report in response to motion, Koresh-Krikorian, relative to reporting on hiring information and vacancy rates by departments on a quarterly basis during fiscal year 2019-20.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Deborah Caruso, Personnel Director, Personnel Department.
Vince Cordell, Personnel Department.
So this is the Personnel Department's report back regarding hiring information and vacancy rates, self-reported by departments on a quarterly basis during fiscal year 1920. In June, as of June 2019, over 20% of the civilian workforce is eligible or was eligible to retire, and the city was faced with the challenge to recruit and train a new generation of public servants. In July 2019, the mayor's office sent each department a memorandum with instructions on an individual basis to self-report their hiring and vacancy rates during the first quarter of fiscal year 1920. 35 departments participated and submitted hiring and vacancy rates specific to their departments. Some of the self-reported information was authorities and vacancy rates as of July 1st, 2019, and vacancy rates as of September 30th, 2019. Hiring priorities as established by the departments, along with their HR team, was submitted, as well as retirement and non-retirement attrition. We also captured all declined job offers and the reason for the declination. On the second page of the report is a summary chart of the vacancy rates as self-reported by the departments. And while some departments reported double-digit vacancy rate reductions, the information revealed an average overall vacancy rate decrease of 2.36 per department. This process was hugely successful because it was a partnership between departments and their HR sections that had a focused approach on hiring. And the main factor in that success were the resources provided by the mayor's office and the council, which led directly to produce those results. So we were very thankful for the resources that we received. And it led to expedited and mass hirings, which led to an overall vacancy decrease. Most departments' hiring outpaced attrition. And some of the figures that are here are as of September 30th. But we actually have some updated information for departments because it's ongoing. So a lot of the numbers that you see are their vacancy rates are actually better than what they are reported on this report. And I believe you may have received some of this information in November, but the top 3 reasons for non-retirement attrition were promotions within the department or other departments, transfers to other departments, or maybe discharge and probationary terminations. And the top 3 reasons for job offer declinations were that they accepted a job offer with another department, and there were some issues like parking, cost of parking, lack of parking in that location, and then the employees or applicants declined to state. I'm available to answer any questions that you have.
Well, it seems like we're doing well and probably have the first time we've really focused on filling positions and tracking how well we're doing on that.
That's correct.
As well as starting to staff adequately for the personnel department. So hopefully all those things seem to have helped.
It was extremely helpful. We were at the first time we were close to fully staffed, and we were able to actually implement some of the hiring processes that are best practices so we can expedite hiring and do some creative ways to hire. So like mass hirings, expedited, different classifications.
So it seems like one of the barriers still to hiring is the issue of parking in some locations. So I wonder if you could talk about the genesis of the city's Joint Labor Management Committee on commute options and parking, and the special MOU on commute options and parking, and how all of those things are getting better or not, and what the trouble spots still are.
Yeah. You can take the lead on I'm not sure where the negotiations are, but it's going to provide an overall context.
Okay. Stephen Montagna can answer on all the issues you've raised.
I'm Stephen Montagna. I'm the Chief of the Benefits Division with the Personnel Department. So there is a Joint Labor Management Benefits Committee that was created to specifically deal with the relationship between parking and the transit incentives that are offered to city employees. So within the MOU, there are certain provisions for parking with respect to how much parking costs, as well as what the priority order is for being able to issue parking. The parking revenues are used to pay for the transit incentives, so the MOU also provides for what those transit incentives are. We are currently working with the committee to get the outside services or to be able to utilize the services of an outside consultant that will do a study and basically give us some expert advice on some ways that we can update this program. Many of the features and the provisions that are included within the MOU have been around for quite some time, and there have been a lot of changes with respect to service offerings and, sort of what the landscape is for transportation benefits generally. So we've issued a request for proposal to work with that consultant. When that information comes back to the committee, they will use that to help to guide them in having discussions about updating the parking MOU.
Yeah, obviously, it's a significant problem that people are actually declining offers because of lack of parking. So, we want to identify and remove any barriers that exist to people being able to take jobs that they would otherwise like to take.
Good afternoon. Bernice Hollins, Office of the CAO. I'm the Chief of the Municipal Facilities Group, and I just came to provide additional clarification. At this point, we do not have any policy directives or funding provided in the budget to explore options for acquiring additional land or developing more intensive parking. At this point, we've been working under a paradigm of trying to promote our various environmental objectives, to reduce single vehicle commuters, to promote our carpooling options and public transit options. However, all that said, if council were to designate this as a policy objective and also to provide the necessary funding, we still have some considerable challenges that we would need to overcome in order to develop additional employee parking within the Civic Center. Specifically, we don't have a lot of land availability. Most of the sites around our existing work sites have been fully built out, with some exceptions, and I'll make note of what those are. But I can say my group works very closely with GSD to address our office needs, our needs for our yards and shops facilities. And one of our biggest challenges is always not necessarily finding the appropriate office space, but finding available parking options, whether it be for city-owned facilities or for leased sites. The other issue that we have is just balancing our needs between developing new infrastructure and maintaining our existing infrastructure. Just within the Civic Center, we have several parking structures that require significant renovation to address safety issues. We actually have one parking structure, the Tinker Toy lot, that we're having to do a complete demolition and eventually a reconstruction of that because there's just no salvaging that structure. So, and also the other area that we have, aside from considering employee parking needs, we also need to provide adequate parking for our fleet vehicles. There is, we did an internal survey of over 8 department operators of our yards and shops facilities, and across the board, everyone identified the lack of parking, not just for employee parking, but specifically for our fleet parking as being a significant impediment to developing, for delivering effective services. Essentially, these vehicles are circulated around the facilities and waste about anywhere from 1 to 2 hours every day just with doing that activity of parking the employee cars and getting the fleet vehicles off the lot. So generally, we would recommend considerations for fleet parking over employee parking, but again, we take our direction from council policy objectives. But it's all that said, in terms of opportunities for expanded parking within the Civic Center for employee purposes, of course, we have the development going on for the Civic Center, the new Civic Center building at the Parker Center site that will provide some employee parking, and the specific ratio of those building occupants to the available parking has not been set at a final level. So there's still some opportunity to discuss right sizing that parking mix. But the second opportunity that we have is, like I said, we do have to demolish the Tinker Toy parking lot. That is something that we're working with BOE to address in the current fiscal year. What we are planning to do is take down that site to do surface paving, just to provide kind of an interim use. That facility is used by LAPD for salvage operations and also to provide parking for officers that are attending local courts in the area. So there is a, 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 We do acknowledge that there's going to be a more intensive use of that site at future, but we have not actually defined what that use would be. There's no funding provided for it beyond the demolition budget, and like I said, just resurfacing the lot. But that is an area that we could potentially look at of addressing some of our employee parking needs. But that type of consideration should occur as part of the broader development plans for the Civic Center, as part of the Civic Center master planning efforts that are underway.
So are we looking at that site and the Parker Center site as locations where we could add floors of parking beyond what we're currently anticipating
Well,
to help solve this problem?
All of that, I would say, no, that's not the current focus. The current focus is really I'm sorry. There's no final, like I said, there's no final plan, there's no final count. The council hasn't endorsed a specific parking to employee ratio. There has been discussion about looking beyond just the immediate need of the building occupants and also looking at community needs, also looking at the visitors that will come into that new building. But it is an opportunity to discuss this concern further. As part of that planning that's going on. And then certainly the Tinker Toy lot, at this point, all we would have is a resurface paving. So there is certainly the opportunity to consider utilizing that for parking purposes. But at the same time, it could also have a mixed use. It could provide office space or other type of community benefits along with parking. But whatever the use is, it really, as I suggested, be considered as part of the master planning to really take into the full needs of the community beyond just the immediate building occupants.
Well, maybe you can pass along at least the concern of this committee that it not be an ongoing impediment to hiring, and that we look at those two sites for some relief in terms of fleet staffing and employee staffing.
I will certainly bring that back to the working group.
Mr. Price, any other
What's the capacity
questions?
of the Tinker Toy lot now?
It is, I
Is
believe,
it exclusively for storage by the police department? Is that?
the first level is used, like I said, for the courtroom, parking the officers coming in who have to attend court, and then the upper levels are utilized more for the salvage operations. I can't remember if that's a 3. Do you remember how many levels the parking is? Pop quiz, anyone in the room? 3? I'm thinking it's 3 too. It's around 3. No more, certainly no more than 4.
So it's going to be dramatically reduced.
It will just have a surface. It would only be sufficient in the interim just to deal with the court parking. We have various options that we're trying to explore for just a temporary location for the salvage operations. But like I said, that's part of our yards and shops operations. We have a master study plan that we're working with BOE to initiate this year. And the first area is going to be rolled out by geographic area. So the first area that we are looking at is the Civic Center. And we do know that we very much need to address our fleet parking needs, and the police salvage operations being one of those.
Good luck. I mean, I agree.
Thank you.
I agree with everyone else, but I think, we should try to maximize parking opportunities in this new building going up. I know it's still not clear exactly what's going to go there, but
And like
there will
I
be
s-
some parking, and so
Yes, definitely.
maximize that to the extent that will
And like I
compensate
said,
for lack of parking in other places.
all of these options come with a cost. So at the point that we look
And
at,
parking is very expensive.
and it's subterranean, so yes. We might, it's probably cheaper to develop another parking structure on the existing Tinker Toy lot. But like I said, that hasn't been vetted, and it really still has to be considered within the full context of how we plan to utilize our Civic Center going forward into the next several decades.
And what's the status of that project now?
I'm not the lead on that one, but BOE has been working to finalize the RFP terms for release.
Still hasn't gone out yet.
No, it has not gone out yet.
Thank you.
All right, well, let me ask one more question. So is the Joint Labor Management Committee still meeting?
Yes.
How often do they meet? How active is this group still?
Right now, we're having them meet on a quarterly basis. It had been some time up until earlier this year that group had met, and then one of the projects that we're working with them on is an updating of their bylaws. And so within the bylaws, they'll, come to agreement as to the frequency of their meetings.
And they're still obviously focused on these issues.
Oh, absolutely.
presumably, and-
Yeah, this is, I mean, the most important thing I think that they're looking to do right now is to be able to update the special MOU. They just want to be able to do that, the right way by getting all the information first before they start to change those provisions.
Thank you. And we have one speaker from the public. All the business of this committee has been dealt with except this item, item number 8. So Wayne Spindler, you would have 1 minute to speak on this one item. And no animal noises or anything else, or we'll have to have you removed.
Animal noises if it's on topic.
You're not on topic, but you can start and be on topic.
That's good. So again, for those of you that don't know, congratulations to Mr. Koretz on becoming the Assistant President Pro Tem. Give him a hand.
Yeah, I don't know that happened, but thank you.
Okay. What? Well, yeah, I'm just mentioning that Nuri's appointing him. Okay. So now we get to the vacancy rates by the department. What?
I want you to say your name for the record.
Okay. There you go. Now, so we get vacancy rates by the department. You don't have any vacancy rates. Personnel department vacancy rates? How many vacancies do you really have? See, none. And that's the problem. So if you have vacancies, there's a couple of people that need a job. And again, submit the resignation of Armando Herman. Yes, sir. He'll make a good staffer for Mr. Koretz and especially Mr. Price.
Thank you.
There you go.
Next time you see him, tell me he's hired.
I'm going to get over to homeless before I ruin that off. Okay.
What else is before us, Mr. Clerk? With no business being before us, we are adjourned.
What was the item? Or you
Oh, the outcome of item 8 was to note and file the Personnel Department report without objection.
All right, thank you, sir.